I live in a 2-story house in Melbourne, Australia with my sister. It's a mother-daughter house, which means it has 2 kitchens. My sister occupies the downstairs and I'm on the top floor. My sister is rarely home because she often stays with her boyfriend, who lives 40 kilometers away. As I mentioned, I was 22 years old in 2005. I shouldn't be scared to be alone at home, but to be honest, sometimes I am. This incident happened one night when I was home alone, in the living room, watching a horror movie. My part of the house has an open plan layout, so the living room, dining room, and kitchen are all one big space. My couch is in the middle of the room, so when I'm watching TV on the couch, my back is facing most of the room behind me. For those who are easily startled, this is not the most comfortable place to sit alone watching a horror movie. I admit, when watching in a dark room with only the light from the TV, I often look behind me. I like to think that I'm not the only 22-year-old guy who does that. After the movie was over, I brushed my teeth, turned off all the lights in the house, and went to bed. I slept for about 2 hours. I woke up around 11 p.m. and at first I wasn't sure why I woke up. Then I heard a voice from downstairs. It sounded like my sister's voice. It sounded like she was inside the house, but I knew it was her voice. I didn't know what she was shouting at me because I was still sleepy and not thinking straight. All I could think of was that she must have been calling me or arguing with her boyfriend. So I got out of bed and went to the pitch-dark hallway. I turned on the hallway light, then walked past the living room and heard my sister's voice again from downstairs. Now I could understand she was calling my name. I walked down the stairs in the dark, shouting at her, "What's wrong?" I looked for the light switch in the downstairs front room but couldn't find it. I walked down her small hallway to her kitchen, found the light switch and turned it on. The kitchen light illuminated her small apartment, including her living room. The lights started dim, but I'd already seen that no one was there. Not her, not her boyfriend. I went to her room, but it was empty. I called her name very loudly once. No one answered, but shortly after I yelled, I heard something fall to the floor in my sister's room. I went back up the stairs like a little kid and returned to my bed where my cell phone was. I tried to call her a few times, but she didn't pick up. I locked myself in the room, wondering if I had just hallucinated. Eventually, I fell asleep, and in the morning I woke up to a text message from my sister asking why I had called her at 11 p.m. I asked if she had come home last night, and she said no, she was staying at her boyfriend's house. I went down to her room to see what might have fallen on the floor, but there wasn't a single object on the floor that could have made that sound. I came to think that I had hallucinated hearing everything that night, but that's what I wanted to believe because the alternative would have been much more terrifying. But I've never actually hallucinated anything else or had a sleep disorder, so how clearly I heard my sister's voice and that sound in her room really scared me. When Ryan was a child, he was often left alone at home. Ryan's mother was a single parent and she worked as a nurse with a bad schedule while Ryan's older brother was away at college. That night was one of the nights where Ryan's mother was working the night shift. It was a weekend night. A female friend of Ryan's named Lisa came over and they chatted for a bit. They watched a few movies and eventually Lisa had to go home because her parents didn't like her coming home late, so Ryan was left alone to watch the house. Ryan continued watching TV in his room, on his bed. Ryan's bedroom was upstairs next to the backyard, so when someone dragged one of the chairs on the outside deck, Ryan heard it. Ryan got up and looked out the window, and Ryan saw someone sitting in one of the deck chairs below. Ryan called out Lisa's name thinking it was her, since she had just left less than 10 minutes ago. Whoever it was, the person stared at Ryan, but it wasn't Lisa. Ryan immediately moved away from the window to hide. It wasn't anyone Ryan recognized, at least in the dark. Ryan sent a text message to a few close friends in their group chat, asking if one of them was pranking him. Those who replied all said no and asked what Ryan was talking about. Ryan didn't really believe one of his friends would come to his house to prank him like that. Scared half to death but still curious, Ryan slowly walked back to the window to look down again, and the person was still sitting in the chair staring at Ryan's window. It was clearly a man, and he must have seen Ryan. Ryan rushed away from the window again to turn off the TV. Ryan sat on his bed, curled up with his arms wrapped around his knees. Ryan waited in the dark for a while. Ryan didn't even want to turn on his phone screen because he was afraid the man would see the light. Ryan didn't even want to move because the window was open and he was afraid the man would hear any movement Ryan made. Ryan wanted him to think he was no longer in the room. Ryan waited long enough, maybe 5 full minutes just sitting there. Ryan highly doubted the man outside was still there. Ryan finally mustered the courage to get up and look out the window. A small part of Ryan died inside when he saw the man was still below, staring at Ryan's window. Instead of running from the window again, Ryan tried to be brave and shouted at him, "What do you want?" Then Ryan saw his shoulders start to go up and down as if he was laughing very hard, but he didn't make an audible laughing sound at first. Then Ryan heard a small whistling sound coming from him. It seemed like he was laughing so hard that he was gasping for air. Ryan asked him to leave, then walked away from the window again. Ryan went back to bed. Ryan was afraid to call the police for some reason. Ryan left the room and sat at the top of the stairs listening. The back door was pushed. He was trying to get into the house. Ryan ran back to the room to hide again. Ryan was 14 years old. Ryan didn't know what else to do. Eventually, Ryan heard the front door knob being jiggled and the man trying to push the front door open as well. Thankfully, he gave up quickly. Ryan closed his room's window and curtains. If our doors weren't locked, Ryan could have been easily killed. Ryan was thin and weak when he was 14, and clearly not a fighter. Ryan didn't leave his room again that night until his mother came home around 9 o'clock. Ryan told her what happened, and her reaction was to get angry at him for not calling 911, and in hindsight, that was very stupid of him, one of many things he did, or rather didn't do, at a young age that he highly questions. This is a story about how I almost died as a little kid, home alone, and probably the most intense night of my life with way too many things going on. We were a family of 5. I was 12 years old at the time, my older brother 16, and my younger sister 7. It was a Friday night in Los Angeles, USA in 2015. My brother was out with his friends causing trouble. I was in my room playing a Star Wars video game when I heard my mom start to panic and cry. I was terrified and rushed out to see what was wrong. My mom was on the phone with my dad telling him that my brother had been hit by a car. Of course, we were all shaken and extremely scared. My brother's leg was broken, but I don't know what else was said on the phone. All I know is that my parents rushed to put on their coats and grabbed my little sister from her room. My parents asked me if I was okay to stay home alone. I said yes, and they rushed out to the car and left. Of course, I was very worried for my brother, but I didn't really want to go to the hospital and see him in such a bad state. I don't think my parents wanted me or my sister to go either, but they didn't want to leave my 7-year-old sister home without them. Before my dad left, he tried to calm my mom down, telling her that my brother would be okay, so seeing my dad like that made me feel better. I felt my mom was just being overly dramatic, as any mom would. I continued to play my Star Wars game for a few more hours. It was well past midnight. I was in my room and heard the front door open. My bedroom door was already closed at this point, so I turned off the TV and PlayStation and crawled into my bed with my Game Boy. I tried to listen for my parents' voices, but I heard nothing. After a few minutes of not hearing them even come up the stairs, I had a feeling something was wrong. I went to my door and opened it quietly. Then, I walked over to the ledge and railing that overlooked the living room. The lights were off, but there were 3 tall people standing in my living room. They were not my family. I was so terrified that I froze for a moment before I could quietly walk back to my room. I closed the door as quietly as I could in my fear, but it wasn't quiet enough, and I knew it. They must have heard the door latch, even if just slightly. I rushed to my closet door, opened it quietly, got inside, and then closed the door. I sat behind a lot of boxes and bags of clothes crammed in my closet. I was actually pretty concealed from view. There was a brief period that felt like forever where I anticipated my bedroom door opening, and it did. I heard footsteps walk into the room. I don't know how many people, maybe 1, maybe 2. I heard footsteps move over to my bed, and my blanket was played with. Then silence. Then more footsteps walked over to the closet door, then silence for a few seconds, and then the closet door opened. My heart was in my throat at this point. All I did was sit still and hold my breath. The door was open for a very long time, but I didn't look up. I didn't move. It had to be a full 20 seconds of silence before the door closed again. Footsteps walked away from the door, then out of the room. I finally looked up and I just realized from where I was crouching behind the bags and boxes, I was probably visible to the person. It wasn't until maybe an hour later that I heard my parents return. I ran downstairs to them. The front door had been left slightly ajar by the people who had come in, and they had stolen a number of valuables from our house. It was a night that went from bad to worse for our family. My parents were in such a rush when they left for the hospital that they apparently didn't even lock the door. I was lucky not to have been killed or kidnapped. I look back now and truly wonder if the person who opened the closet and just stood there for 20 seconds saw me hiding there. Maybe he was just a guy who came to rob the house, not to kidnap or harm a child. Or maybe he just didn't see me and I just escaped death or injury. I was home alone for a full week when I was a teenager, living with my parents, which was a rare occurrence as my parents didn't go out often. My mother's wealthy friend, Patricia, invited my parents on a trip that she paid for. I'm an only child, so I was left alone at the house. We lived in Manchester, England, which is in Greater Manchester. My parents' old house had woods in the backyard and was on a lonely road that only a few cars passed per day. We had a large deck in the backyard that overlooked the woods and a decently sized backyard. We even had a small koi pond and an above-ground swimming pool. It was a Thursday night, I remember, because I was talking with friends about plans for the weekend that day. This took place in July 2018, when I was 16 years old. I was on the deck smoking weed with my speaker, playing music, which is when it all started. I thought I heard a noise from outside in the woods. I turned down my music and listened for a bit. The sound didn't repeat, so I turned it back up. When the music was loud again, I heard a noise from outside in the woods again. This time I turned the music completely off and listened for longer. There was a voice calling from the woods again, confirming that I wasn't just hearing things. A male voice said, "Hey, over here." He was kind of far away, but not too far. The woods were anywhere from 20 to 30 yards from the deck, and that's where the voice came from. I never thought it was someone calling me, but rather maybe just some kids playing manhunt or something. The voice called out again, "Hey, over here, we need help." This time I realized the voice was too deep to be kids, and when a voice is yelling, "We need help," it's obviously going to be a little bit worrying. I started to feel a little uneasy now, as I now wondered if this was directed at me. Now I heard the voice yell, "Right in front of you, please come help us." And the voice was coming from right in front of me in the woods. Now I felt this was directed at me. I reluctantly called back, "Who is it?" And they responded, "We just need help, we're stuck in the woods." I called back, "What do you mean?" Then the voice responded, "Please come help, right in front of you." I got out of my chair, walked down the deck stairs to the lawn, and proceeded towards the woods. I called out, "I'm coming." "Where are you guys?" The voice responded instantly, "Right in front of you, I see you." I responded, "Wait, are you alone or with someone?" No response this time. I stopped in my tracks about halfway to the woods. I had a bad feeling about this. I started walking backward, back towards the house and deck. I didn't even want to turn my back on the woods because it took me so long to realize there was something very suspicious about this situation. I got back to the deck and the voice didn't say anything else. If they were really seeing me and this was real, they would have said something like, "Well, where are you going?" at the very least. They knew I had caught on to the situation, but who knows how many people were out there. It could have been one, it could have been three. All I knew was being stuck in the woods made absolutely no sense, especially if he or they could actually see me. Like, did his clothes get caught on a branch? I got inside the house and locked all the doors just in case. I relaxed in the living room for a bit, still under the influence of weed, and I think that's why I was more trusting at the start because of how relaxed and calm I was. However, I heard the voice again from outside, closer now, definitely in the backyard and not the woods anymore. I heard splashing water, which could have been the pool or the koi pond. I rushed to the window to look. I didn't see anyone at first, but then the voice called out, "I see you," with a laugh. I made out at least one person visible. He was hiding behind the pool on the other side and I could only see his head. It was too dark to make out anything other than his dark, medium-length hair. I closed the blinds and tried to ignore him. Maybe he would lose interest if he saw I wasn't entertaining him. He was probably a sick, crazy person who enjoyed messing with people, so I didn't want to give him what he wanted. But the breaking point was when there was a horrifying, aggressive banging on the window I had just closed the blinds on, and on the other side the man yelled, "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs to "Go away, you freak, the police are coming." I yelled it over and over again, trying to make myself sound crazier than him. I heard him start to laugh on the other side of the glass. His laughter started to fade as I assume he left. I sat back down on the couch, shaking, trembling, out of breath. I sat there for a while, and it seemed the man had really given up. I was still able to fall asleep soundly that night as the weed helped me sleep. I wonder if I would have handled the situation any differently if I hadn't been under the influence of weed. The situation made me more paranoid about who I opened the door for. I'm 25 years old and still live at home with my parents in New York City. One day, in 2021, they were both out of the house and I was shooting hoops in the front yard. At one point while I was playing, I looked up at one of the upstairs windows and saw a woman standing there. Not my mom, not my sister. She was a random woman. I guess when she saw me staring at her, she moved away from the window. When I got inside and went upstairs to check the living area, she was nowhere to be found. I checked every room I could, every bedroom, bathroom, every closet. Then I checked the downstairs, which included the living room, kitchen, dining room, one bedroom, and more closets. Finally, I checked the basement, and I highly doubted she could be down there. It's a small basement with a couple of couches, a bar, and 2 closets. Not a lot of places for someone to hide, but when I opened the second closet door, I was terrified because I didn't know anywhere else someone could hide in the house. This was the last unchecked spot I could think of. I pulled the door open as if I was pulling off a bandage, and just as I had with the previous closets, I immediately pushed myself into the closet just in case the woman was there. But all I pushed into was a pile of coats and coat hangers. I was incredibly confused. I wasn't going to question my sanity. I definitely saw the woman, and I knew it. That's not something you would imagine so clearly. I went back to the middle floor and screamed as loud as I could that whoever was in the house needed to get out. I screamed so loudly that our next-door neighbor came over and asked me if I was okay. I told him I had just seen a woman in our upstairs window watching me play basketball. He came inside and helped me search again. When we couldn't find her, I assumed she slipped out the back door, which I had in fact unlocked after I went out to grab the basketball from the yard. So my neighbor left. I locked all the doors, called my parents, and told them the crazy story. And they weren't too happy, but they asked me to make sure nothing was stolen. I did that, and thankfully it seemed all valuables were still in their places. So now, fast forward to that night. I went to bed after checking the house one more time just for peace of mind. It was hard to fall asleep even though my mind was racing for obvious reasons. Most people can't relate to seeing a random stranger in their window inside their house. But my restlessness helped me in this situation, and here's why. I eventually started to doze off a little. Then I heard some noises from my other side. My fan above me was on, so the room wasn't silent, which is why I didn't immediately turn to the other side at the first sound I heard. But the noises started as sound-like noises, human-like noises. I turned to the other side and she was there, coming out from under my bed. She was standing upright on the bed and I screamed so loudly, more loudly than before. I jumped out of my bed and lunged at her onto the floor and wrapped my hands around her neck, asking her who she was. My doorbell rang. It was my neighbor again. I got the tall, dirty woman off the floor and dragged her to the front door with me as she fought and clawed at me. I still have 2 scars on my right arm from her claws. I opened my front door to my neighbor again and he came inside on his own and helped me hold the woman down. That's when I called the police. The whole time we waited for the police, the woman screamed and swore at my neighbor and me, threatening us as well. The best way to put it, she looked and acted like a meth addict who is currently going through withdrawal symptoms. When the police arrived, one of the officers knew exactly who the woman was. They had dealt with her multiple times before. Her name happened to be Karen. It was so satisfying to watch her being taken away in the back of the cop car. I told my neighbor how thankful I was to him for coming over so quickly to help, and that night my mind was still racing, but instead of being utterly terrified, which I still was a little, I felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction, and I can't fully explain why.